I love taking long walks on the beach early in the morning when there are hardly any people. The sea air on my face and the salty scent always help make 8-hour shifts behind a desk more bearable, and watching the sun rise over the waves has always given me a sense of calm. However, that changed yesterday. When I went for a walk, it was a slightly rougher day. The waves were breaking harder, and the wind was blowing strongly as I walked. I noticed something strange moving through the waves like a pinball ball. I saw it was a sealed plastic bag with tape on the top inside. There was what appeared to be a book, and out of curiosity, I waded into the water up to my ankles to get it out. When I got back to the car, I opened the bag and discovered that the book was actually a diary. According to the inscription on the cover, it belonged to a man named Anthony Hodson, and it was part of a sailing trip he took almost 20 years ago. As I was already late for work, I didn't read anymore, and I kept it in my briefcase thinking that I could read it later and try to return it to its owner. When I got home that night, I pulled out the journal and began to read it enthusiastically. However, as I moved to the last page, my interest turned to fear, a terror I had never felt before. I didn't know what to do when I finished reading it. I can't send it to anyone, and if I give it to a newspaper or television, they would surely think it's a joke. I finally decided to share it here, as I know many others have, to share what you have seen or found. Tell me what you think. But for me, what I read has given me the worst nightmares I've had since I was a child, and will probably keep me away from the ocean forever. Here are the entries: July 15th, 2004, 3:34 p.m. Well, here we are. Journal. Today is the day I have dreamed of almost my whole life since I was a child, and spent time at my uncle's house in Maine, reading their old sailing magazines. If I have ever wanted to take an ocean voyage, using only my skills, knowledge, and determination to get to the other side, after almost 30 years of waiting, the time has finally come. This is in large part thanks to the group of friends I have made on this journey of life. There are 6 of us in total: my Daryl, Xander, Winston, Holly, and Anastasia. It was Xander's idea to start saving money to buy a sailboat over 12 years ago. And now I'm sitting in my cabin in what seems to have taken an eternity to get the boat. It's called Lunging Lion, a 52-foot Sparkman and Stevens Joe from 1950. And God, it's one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. For over 30 years, it's in very good condition, New we are on a dock in Boston, and I can hear the others loading the last boxes of provisions and gas barrels. Tomorrow we set sail at dawn, heading for England. If the wind helps us, we should get there in a little over a week. It's almost 3,000 nautical miles we will cross, and it will be a journey that we will remember for a lifetime. I would love to keep writing, maybe wax poetic about this adventure, but I hear they are calling me to help, so I'll leave it here to be the first entry. I think it wasn't bad. Until next July 16th, 2004, 11:17. Good morning, diary. We are already on our way. We got up. Shortly after 6, we checked the navigation charts, and after saying goodbye to the harbor master, we cast off. We used the diesel engine to leave Boston Harbor, and once away from the last bulge, we turned off the engine and raised the sails. The west wind caught them immediately, and now we are sailing at about 9 knots. It is not what we expected, but it is enough. I can already feel an immense peace. Boston and the land are becoming a thin line behind us. and with the Langin Lion sailing alone under sail, the only sounds are the creaking of the hull cutting through the water, the sails being hit by the wind, and the cry of the seabirds that follow us too. You hear the laughter and the screams of my friends. The atmosphere is one of excitement, since what was once only a topic of conversation on drunken nights is now a reality. Everyone on the boat has a job. Dar and Winston are the most experienced in navigation, since a few years ago they sailed from Washington to Baja California. In a competition, they will be the captain and the navigator on this trip Shander, and I have some experience, although only on short trips, so we will help with the direction of the boat. Holly and Anastasia will be in charge of the sails with our help. Of course, Anastasia will also be the cook, and I must say that after trying some of their meals, I agree. I looked at the depth gauge, and according to it shows we are already more than 3,000 feet deep. For many this would be terrifying, but for someone who has loved the sea all his life, like me, it is. I can only imagine what strange creatures swim beneath us in the dark, cold waters, listening to the creaking of our boat. Darl just asked me to take the rudder ace, so I'm finishing this post. I'll write here. Soon, July 18th, 2004, 1:37 p.m. Well, I can't say it's a good evening since things are not going as I expected. We have run into a fairly dense fog bank that seems to have risen from the water and trapped everything in its path, including us. You can't see beyond 6 met in any direction, and any sound bounces off the fog with a high-pitched echo. We had to take down some sails and reduce speed to 6 knots to avoid trouble. The truth is, the journal is quite eerie. It seems as if the world has disappeared, and we are the only ones left. Winston reassured me, saying that he has seen fog like this before, and that it won't last more than a few hours. I am grateful, because if it lasted longer, I think I might go crazy. No article or photo mentioned this, and I wish they had. It wouldn't have changed my decision to make this trip, but at least I would be more prepared. Somewhat big splash in the fog. None of us could see what caused it, but we all heard it. It was a single splash, like the sound of a gunshot in the fog. I asked Daryl what it could have been, and he shrugged. It could be anything. Tony, lots of things jump in deep water. It could be a whale, a shark, chasing fish, or even a piece of floating debris kicked up by a high wave. His explanation put me at ease instead of making me uncomfortable at the unknown. My mind found explanations logical according to radar. We are about 400 miles off the coast of the U.S., and the depth is about 6,000 feet. I have to help others, so I will stop writing. For now I will write later, 19 July 2004, 1:17 What the hell happened? It hadn't even been 4 hours since Chanda, Holly, and I had gone to sleep, when the ship seemed to hit something. I woke up and bolted out of the bunk. It was like we hit another ship. I checked on Shanda and Holly. They just had a few bumps, and ran the deck, where everything was chaos. Winston and Daryl were screaming, confused, and Anastasia was moaning near the bow. No one knew what had happened. Winston told me it was like we hit a block of concrete. I found Anastasia lying on the deck with a bump on her head and a cut on her cheek. We took her downstairs, where Holly took care of her. Although she will be okay, she needs to rest. Yet I don't know what we hit. Maybe it was a whale or a log, but no one saw anything, and the night was Clara. I can't believe Daryl or Winston would have put us in danger. Both say they didn't see anything, and I believe them before trying to get some more sleep. I noticed something strange, a putrid smell in the air, like ammonia. We have nothing on board that would cause that smell, so I don't know what to think. It's probably nothing, but still I wrote it down. Good night. I hope there are no more surprises. July 20th, 2004, 4 a.m. 37 p.m. Good morning, diary. Today, things seem calmer right now. I'm at the helm holding it with my foot. While writing, most are down, having dinner, and I'll go when they finish. Someone has to stay in charge of the helm. I'm glad to say that Anastasia is feeling better. Apart from the bump on her head, she's in good spirits and making clam chowder, one of our favorites. We're back up to a good speed, between 11 and 12 knots with a tailwind, before we had to turn the engine on for a bit, because the wind died, but everything went well. A while ago, I saw something incredible. A sperm whale jumped out of the water about 800 meters from us. Seeing that black giant was impressive. It jumped several times before disappearing under the waves. I've never seen anything like that. Now looking at the horizon, I see storm clouds. Lightning flashes through dark clouds, according to a tanker report. The storm will be strong, which will delay our trip to England to about 2 weeks. Despite everything, if enjoying this trip, my God, what a scare. I heard a loud splash behind me, but there was nothing. It scared me, but it doesn't seem to be anything serious. Shander is coming up now to relieve me at the helm, so it's dinner time according to the radar. We are more than 1 mile from the coast. I will write later, 21st July, 2004, 7:18 I don't even know where to start this post. I'm in shock, and in so much pain, there's no other way to put it. Holly is gone. Last night, we went into the storm. Shortly after 8, the waves and wind were a nightmare. It felt like we were sailing through a hell. Everyone except Anastasia, who was in the galley, was undercover trying to keep the boat upright. Holly was adjusting the sails when a sudden change of wind happened. It made the boom move. Suddenly, Shander and Winston managed to dodge it, but Holly did not. The boom hit her in the head and shoulders, and she fell into the sea before anyone could react. For a moment I saw her in a flash, floating about 15 meters behind the boat, waving her arms, but in the next flash, she was gone. We could not turn the boat without sinking, and there was nothing we could do since the storm has subsided a bit. But the boat is damaged. The radio and radar are not working, so we can't call for help or know our exact location. Plus it seems something is wrong. With the propeller, as the engine won't move us, Dar will check it when the storm calms down. More for now. I just want to get to England. July 21st, 2004, 15:13. The storm finally subsided enough for Dar to check the prop. When the waves subsided, and it seemed like we were in the eye of the storm, he put on flippers, a mask, and jumped into the water to inspect it. When he surfaced, his expression was one of confusion and concern. He told us something had ripped off half the propeller. The only blade left was bent and wouldn't turn, and the rest had disappeared. I remember exactly what he said. I've been sailing for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this in the open sea. Normally, this only happens when you get restless. I asked him to get back on the boat while I swam towards the stern ladder. I swear I saw something under the water, a shadow darker than the rest of the ocean, moving as if it had a life of its own, slowly approaching us. Whatever it was, looked big. I admit it when I saw that shape. I couldn't help but reach out and grab Daryl, almost dragging him out of the water. I know it sounds ridiculous, but after everything that's happened, we're all nervous now. I'm sitting in the cockpit, watching Anastasia and Shander try to repair the sails. I hope they make it before nightfall, and to make matters worse, that smell of ammonia is back. This time, Winston noticed it too, and held his nose, complaining about the awful smell. We looked around, but saw nothing. I'm starting to regret having planned this trip over a decade ago. I'll write later, 21st, 2018, 2004, 18-1. Daryl is gone. What the hell is going on just before nightfall? He came up with a flashlight in one hand and a spare propeller on the other. He told us he had brought one in case of an emergency, which gave us a sigh of relief. The storm was still approaching, and Shander and Anastasia had not yet finished repairing the sails. Dar got ready with his diving gear. He put the regulator in his mouth, and with an L, he went back under. We all watched him descend with the flashlight shining under the boat. Every few seconds we saw bubbles rise to the surface, and the light from his flashlight moving for a few minutes. The tension eased a little, and Winston even made us laugh with a joke about sharks. But suddenly Daryl's light started to move rapidly, as if it was spinning out of control. The bubbles came out more frequently, and then his light disappeared. It was as if it was ripped off. A stream of bubbles sprang forth quickly, and then nothing. We waited, but Derry never reappeared. It was as if he had never been there. We debated whether anyone else should go in the water. I finally gave in and grabbed a mask. I didn't plan on going too far, down just enough to take a look under the boat. As I went down the swim ladder, I felt the cold water on my feet, and a chill ran through my body with a flashlight shining around me. I saw nothing. The water was empty, no fish, no Dare. I turned my head but saw no trace of him. However, as I looked down into the depths, I swear I saw a flash of color, as if something went from dark blue to maroon. That was enough to get me out of the water as fast as possible. He's not there. I told the others. We all agreed. No one else was to go in the water. It was too risky, especially with the storm almost upon us. We turned on the bilge pumps to prepare. I hear them rumble in the hull as I write this in the galley. I can't help but think of that shadow I saw under the water, but I can't lose my cool. We all need to keep a cool head. If we want to get out of this, I'll write soon. Hopefully with better news. July 3rd, 2004, 2:30 a.m. They say, if you stare too long into the abyss stares back at you. It may not be the exact quote, but that doesn't matter anymore. Not after you've looked into the eyes of a monster like that. What happened? The storm caught up with us that night and beat us all night, and part of the next day. I thought many times that the wooden hull would break and throw us all into the sea. But somehow, the ship stayed afloat. It's true what they say. They don't build ships like they used to. However, when dawn broke, the storm became even fiercer, and we had to go out on deck to steer the ship and keep it from capsizing. Shander, Winston, and I went up with life jackets and asked Anastasia to stay down for safety. Going out was like walking straight into hell. The rain was hitting our faces, and the wind made it almost impossible to hear our voices. Lightning lit up the darkness, and with the few flashlights we had, we hoisted the remaining sails and tried to head what the compass indicated. As England, we didn't know how far we were, or how much the storm had diverted us, but we had to try for 3 hours. The waves shook us, but it seemed that we were moving forward. Then the boat stopped. Suddenly we felt a jolt, as if we had hit something solid, and the waves began to enter with force in the cockpit. Luckily the hatch was closed, so no more water entered. What have? We hit," shouted Winston, trying to be heard over the wind. "I don't know," answered Shander while shining his flashlight towards the water. "I don't see." It was silent. You don't see what Winston shouted, but Shander didn't answer. I felt a terrible fear, and I pointed my flashlight towards where he was near the bow. I saw him still kneeling, holding on to the railing, and looking out to sea. Shander. "What's wrong with you?" I shouted as loud as I could. He slowly turned to look at me. What I saw left me frozen. Shander, who was always the bravest, had a pale face, like a corpse, and his eyes wide open. His hand that held the flashlight was shaking. At that moment the putrid stench returned, but this time it was unbearable. Then I heard Winston scream. I turned my flashlight to port and saw something I will never forget next to Winston. There was something else. Something that had come out of the sea. It was a tentacle, a real one, like straight out of an old movie. But this one was alive. The tentacle was huge, with big, thick suckers. It was dark, maroon. And when I looked at Winston, God, no, the tentacle had wrapped around him so tightly. I saw his face turn red. Even in the storm, he tried to fight. But it was useless, suddenly, in the blink of an eye. It disappeared. It dragged him into the sea. So fast, I barely saw him. I tried to reach it, but it was useless. I pointed my flashlight toward the water, and I wish I hadn't, because I illuminated an eye, a gigantic eye that looked at me cold and menacing, the size of a wall clock. The pupil contracted, and the creature disappeared under the boat. I turned to warn Shander, but he was gone. His flashlight was rolling across the deck, where he had been kneeling. Then another tentacle appeared over the railing, moving as if searching for something. I gasped and ran downstairs, closing the hatch behind me. I knew that if that monster wanted to, he could tear it off without effort. Anastasia was shaking. I had seen what happened to Winston. Despite my fear, I hugged her to comfort her. We stayed there on the floor, listening to the tentacles moving around, searching the deck. After a while, everything calmed down. The storm calmed down a bit, and the waves stopped hitting the boat so hard. Anastasia fell asleep in my arms, and I carried her to the bunk. She needs to rest, me too, but I can't sleep every time I close my eyes. I see those tentacles and that eye, and I know that thing is still there. I can smell the ammonia, even with the windows and the hatch closed for now. I curl up on the kitchen seats. I don't know what else to do. There's nothing else I can do. Who cares about the date? This will be my last entry in this journal. I don't know how many days we've been drifting. The storm finally passed, and the waves have been relatively calm since then, if it weren't for the fact that I know what is beneath them. I'd almost say everything is calm, but it isn't. Our food and water are running out. All the sails were torn in the storm, and Anastasia is in no condition to sew them up. And sadly, I never learned. It wouldn't be much use anyway. The rudder disappeared. I saw it floating half a mile away from us, no doubt torn off by that creature, leaving us stranded. Now I know what it is. At first I was too scared to understand, but after thinking about it, I recognize it. Arches do. A giant squid, much larger than the one scientists have recorded, probably about 20 or 25 meters long, by the size of the eye. I saw this creature has terrified sailors for centuries, inspiring the legend of the Kraken, dragging ships and hunting those who fall into the water. Many said those stories were exaggerations, but now I can assure you they were wrong. The legends were true. The Ling lion is slowly sinking. The pumps, Failed yesterday. Both Anastasia and I heard them go off when I went up to check, looking around like an owl to make sure I wasn't caught. I saw there was water in the engine compartment. We tried to bail it out for a while, but soon we gave up. What would be the use? We can't call for help, and we can't escape in the boat, because the creature would attack us. That damn smell is still there. A warning of its proximity, along with the scratches of its tentacles on the hull. We are lost, no matter how you see it. And this morning, Anastasia fell overboard. I think she couldn't stand the weight any longer. I woke up just in time to see it. Since the day before, it hadn't spoken much and was very distant. I didn't know what I was thinking, but when I woke up, I saw the hatch to the open cabin. I felt fear wash over me, and I ran to the hatch just in time to see her jump over the stern rail. I heard the splash of her body in the water. The sound of the tentacles brushing the boat stopped, and then nothing. Just silence. Now, I am alone. Well, not completely. That thing is still here. The brushing of the tentacles has returned. As I write this, the boat has gone lower into the water. The whole back is almost submerged, and I can see something just below the surface behind the boat, waiting patiently, staring at me with those cold eyes. It knows as well as I do that I don't have much time left, so I'm going to put this journal in a bag, seal it with tape, and throw it into the sea. Maybe with luck, it will reach some shore, so someone will know what happened. The boat is sinking faster, and the tentacles are starting to come up on deck. I'm going to get into the bunk and lock the door. If I'm lucky, I might drown before it can reach me. I don't want to be torn apart by the beak of that thing like the others, please. If you ever read this, be careful with the ocean. The monsters live here forever.